Hello everyone, welcome to the SBK Betting Podcast, a special edition as we creep ever closer to the Cheltenham Festival. We're around about 3 weeks away now, and we've got special podcasts for plenty of the divisions at this stage, but we wanted to get as close as possible to have a real look at the novice hurdlers and the picture as it stands now. We thought we might be more clear about the state of this division for the three feature races at this stage. But in fact, I think it's fair to say that at least the Dublin Racing Festival from a couple of weeks ago has created possibly more questions than answers, and the overall state of affairs is rather open, which I believe makes this a lot more interesting in terms of a conversation, debate flowing from each end of the sphere. Will the Irish reign supreme? Will it be an opportunity for the best of the English to come out? And essentially, we definitely have very good betting heats, which is why we are here to find the best betting proposition for the Supreme, the Ballymore and the Albert Bartlett novice hurdles. We'll start as customary with the first race of the Tuesday, the first race to open the festival, the Supreme Novice Hurdle. As always, I've got Tom Collins, Ross Miller joining me to give their views on where they are now at this stage, looking ahead. We've obviously been having this in our mind, just on the back of it. Obviously, we're always focused on the racing at hand, but always thinking about these horses from early on in the season to where they've got to at this point. Facile Vega, 3-1 favourite at this point. Definitely have been shorter than that earlier on in the season. His reputation just slightly tarnished after what only you can call complete bomb out at the Dublin Racing Festival earlier in the month. Nationale 4-1, Etait Temps 6-1, Tahmuras 12s, High Definition 12-1, Diverge is 14-1, Impaire Et Passe 18s, Hunter's Yarn 22, Chasing Fire 25-1, and bigger prices the rest, including the likes of Luccia, who is 33-1. Whether she will take up her position here or whether she'll go to the Mayor's Novices Hurdle, that is yet to be decided. So there's definitely still some decisions to be made, but from what we know, Facile Vega is definitely going to take up his position here, as always has been mooted by Willie Mullins, his trainer. And of course, this is a race that has been either dominated by the likes of Willie Mullins or Nicky Henderson. Now, I'll come to Tom first, because Tom, you've been long a supporter of Facile Vega, champion bumper winner. Looked like a very, very, very good horse. At the beginning of this year, he had the whole world at his feet, and he was ticking off every challenge with, as the name suggests, in quite facile fashion. Where do you stand after putting him up at the beginning of the season in this race, after that race last time? Can he come back for that?
I think he can. I know plenty of punters will look to take him on, and potentially they're right in doing so, because, you know, when a horse loses their invincibility, as I've touched on in previous podcasts, then suddenly you don't want to be with that horse. You think, wow, the ceiling isn't as high as we thought. Maybe the floor is a lot lower than we thought, and he could bomb out again. That could happen here, and he's still favourite, so I can understand why some people would want to take him on. However, this horse has much the best form in the race. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's got course form. He can clearly handle multiple types of ground. He has early speed. And I know that we're talking about a hurdle race here, so it's not a flat race. Early speed, though, is important, because the hustle and bustle of a Cheltenham Festival contest, you don't want to be in the middle of the pack, I'll tell you that, because you will have to be miles the best to win, to overcome trouble in running and bumps left, right and centre, etc. So he's going to be on the front end. There's a lot going his way. Last time out, he just didn't run his race. He produced an RPR £16 below his previous best. He returned lame. I actually thought he bled that day. And if he did bleed, then I was going to come on this podcast and be like, well, I'm going to have to take him on now, because it's kind of a rule of mine where I don't want to back horses that bled last time out, because that is a huge imponderable. That is highly likely to happen again in the future. However, he returned lame, so it was a different issue. They went hard early on. That wouldn't have helped him either. His jumping was a bit sticky as well. I just think a lot went against him that day. It clearly wasn't the Facile Vega that we've seen in every other one of his starts. Put a line through that, and he's clearly the horse to beat. He was 4-6 for this Supreme Novice Hurdle before that race at the Dublin Racing Festival. I don't think the jump out to 3-1 is worthy. I think he should be around 9-4 for this race, and therefore I still think there's value in his price. I know among the fact that he performed badly last time out, people are going to say his jumping's not good enough to win a Supreme. But I think his jumping is actually better than Marine Nationale, who is arguably the biggest danger in the market. And there just, in my opinion, isn't that much depth in the Supreme this year, unlike in recent seasons. So I'm going to stick by my guns. I'm nothing but loyal. Facile Vega for me in the Supreme.
On that point, obviously, he didn't have the best trip into the race last time. You know, they said that Willie Mullins himself said everything went wrong, and you get the impression that there was definitely a slight miscommunication with maybe the jockey on how he should have been ridden. There was an air of frustration with plenty of Willie Mullins' horses coming out of that. And what he said about Lossiemouth anyway was that he worried about the prep having a bit of an impact on that horse. Now, Lossiemouth had a completely different bump around and all those various factors, but Facile Vega just disappointed. Do you worry that experience dents his confidence, or do you see it as nothing but, you know, a learning exercise, and that the horse, as Willie Mullins says, is not a machine, and it's very much based on there has to be pace in the race, he has to be handier, he can't be right up there trying to make the lead himself?
Firstly, on the comments of Willie Mullins towards Paul Townend, I think they're a bit unjust in regard to Facile Vega. Now, Willie Mullins obviously knows a lot more than me about how a horse wants to run, especially one of his own horses. But at the same time, I don't think the fact that they went reasonably hard early led to Facile Vega's bitter disappointment. Now, obviously, he's returned lame. That was a much better excuse. High Definition did push him through the early stages, but we've seen Facile Vega in the past go really fast early on and still maintain and sustain that gallop. And I'm sure that at the halfway point in that race, when High Definition departed, that if you asked a number of punters, in-running punters, even people who just like horse racing, who was going to win, people would have still said Facile Vega, despite the fact he went hard early. So I don't think that was a massive excuse for his below par effort. You know, horses do disappoint they're not machines, as Willie just touched on and you've said. And in fact, Ross a couple of weeks ago, or last week actually, gave the point about Shishkin coming back from a couple of really below par performances. And look what he did last week. He was brilliant, albeit in a race that completely fell apart. So I think you can forgive a performance like that, especially when there is a viable excuse in the fact that he was sore, he was lame, he just clearly didn't run his race. I think 3-1 is far too drastic. If he was 9-4, then maybe look elsewhere. But no, I want some of that 3-1, Jess.
Okay, I'm nervous. Willie Mullins has been very open this year, and he said, you know, he's not an aeroplane, but he has also said in his comments from some of the stable tours, if the horse recovers from his race, it will, you know, we're still going to the Supreme, where he had a very, very hard race, and it will take a fair bit of recovering from. We'll need all the time we have. Now, Willie Mullins is an expert at you know, producing these horses for the festival, so there's no doubt about that. But it just wasn't ideal preparation for a horse that is the current favourite for this race. But you're right, it's not the deepest, and Willie Mullins has got plenty lining up in a state where, you know, he could, and as it happened at the Dublin Racing Festival, get beaten by one of his own. Ross, I think TC touched on it quite rightly about how you should forgive a horse for one bad run, as you made so eloquently the point about Shishkin, that we are very quick to dismiss a horse who's been basically untouchable. Then they go and put in a bad performance, and we suddenly ridicule them as, you know, they're not as good as they were. Is that what we should be doing here, or do you think it's a different scenario for a case of Facile Vega?
I think we had a greater body of work to judge Shishkin on than Facile Vega, certainly over hurdles. And you have to say that, you know, the run that really got everyone excited was his champion bumper win at Cheltenham last year. And unusually, the champion bumper form hasn't worked out at all well. But no, I think I don't prescribe to this, throw him in the bin, he's nowhere near what he was. I think what's concerning is Willie Mullins sort of said, you know, Paul rode him like an airplane, needs to ride him like a horse. But actually, all the way through the beginning of the season, he's been pretty vocal, unusually, in saying he's as good as we've had. When you consider the horses that he has had a few horses that are virtually aeroplanes. So it concerns me that they're going to try and get him to settle more. I think that could see him become quite keen. I think it'll see his jumping compromised. I certainly wouldn't talk anyone out of backing him at 3-1. but I just think the head of the market is generally a bit of a mess. Facile Vega, Etait Temps, who was behind Facile Vega previously. Nationale, who won the Royal Bond, I think is going to be better on better ground, but he won the Royal Bond finishing just ahead in front of Irish Point, who was very well beaten behind Etait Temps. So given that I can't make much of a sort of picture out of that, I've looked a bit further down the market, and I've got two. I mean, the first is Luccia, and I think, it is very unlikely she runs here. So let's get that clear straight away. But she's 33-1. I'm very happy to lose a few pound on the chance that, Nico sweet talks Nikki into running here. I think she's been really impressive. And I think she would be near enough favourite on the day if she runs here. 142 rated already, get £7. Her jumping needs to improve, but I think it will. She's got bags of speed. It won't matter if the ground is soft or a bit quicker. Her bumper run at Sandown was very impressive, and I thought at Exeter last time she absolutely demolished a field that wasn't top class, but they weren't bad horses all the same. So I think she's really interesting, but I think she is an unlikely runner. And then the other one that the more I look, the sweeter I am actually is Novice Racing. Now they've got Tahmuras with Paul Nicholls. They've also got Hansard. I've really liked him from the start. He was far too keen at Huntingdon and still got the job done, and then went to Plumpton and conceded a £7 penalty to Mr. Chewy, who's a decent horse in Nigel Twistons-Davis. Didn't particularly enjoy the track, I didn't think. It was all happening a bit sharp for him, but powered up the hill at Plumpton and put 2 lengths away from Mr. Chewy and was pulling clear all the way. I think it's a sort of race and a sort of horse where a more powerful gallop, a bigger field will suit him. He runs in the Dovecot this weekend. I think he'll go close in the Dovecot. I think he'll win that, and he'll be a lot less than his odds are now. I mean, I think he'd be north of 33-1 comfortably at the moment. I think he's a really exciting horse. And he, unlike Tahmuras, who does hold a couple of entries at Cheltenham, he only holds an entry in the Supreme. So I'd be tempted to have a few pound on him at the moment at big prices.
Yeah, he'd be bigger than 50-1 anyway at this stage for Hansard. I think that will slim down should he win at Kempton. And obviously you might be listening to this post the Kempton race as well, so have a check on Hansard. Luccia, as you say, she would really spice things up, wouldn't she? And you get the impression that Nikki would rather go the safer route. Nico is quite happy to play ball. It's not a race which has had a plethora of mares before, but they've not exactly been. They've been successful when they've given it a go. Out of interest, pop quiz for you. Can you name a winner?
Like a butterfly.
Was French Ballerina a mare?
There we go. Got one.
Well done, TC.
One from the non-jumps man, Ross Miller. Come on.
No, you got
Willie Mullins' first Cheltenham winner, I think it was.
Oh, you're going back before me now. I'm a young pup, Jess. I just look old. We got Tourist Attraction in 95 and Like a Butterfly won it in 2002. So it can be done, and it will, and I'm sure it will be done again. And I think that, as you say, Luccia is got in what is an open division, and where Nicky Henderson doesn't have a runner. Where he saw the wonderful Constitution Hill win this last year. And I just think that is the state of, bar the next race, which we're going to talk about, there isn't one horse that comes into this race with a flawless record. And we're kind of used to the Supreme having a horse that's coming off the back of several very, very impressive victories. For me, my selection is going to be a horse that I think would be a lot shorter at the age-old point if he was with another yard. And he does have a flawless record, and that is Marine Nationale for Barry Connell, who's just proven himself as a trainer. Previously, we've seen these colours plenty as an owner with Willie Mullins, but he's now with his own licence with Michael O'Sullivan, riding like a very accomplished young man. And this horse's form speaks for itself. The win at Fairy House back in December has worked out very well. The Royal Bond, the Grade 1, and he excites me. I like the fact that they've given him a good break. As I said, the form is a big tick there. I think he
as TC touched on, maybe his jumping does need to improve, but he looks like a very capable horse in this field, and has got less questions answered than Facile Vega does after that last run, and after quite a tough race, and he's 4-1. And then the other one for me is Diverge, an unknown quantity by Frankel. Doesn't really make sense, the breeding, but Willie Mullins has turned this horse into clearly quite a capable jumper, and he excites Willie Mullins considering what he did last time. He doesn't have a huge amount of jumping experience, which is maybe the slight concern in a race like this, hence why he's 14-1, but he's got a lot of flat experience from his time in France, so he knows how to race. And he just could be a bit of a outsider here in terms of a Willie Mullins perspective at 14-1. So happy to give Diverge a bit of a go. And that win last time at Punchestown was very, very impressive. Form isn't huge, but he couldn't have done it any better, really. So that's Diverge in the Supreme Novices hurdle. You're either with Facile Vega, you're against it. You're with TC, or you're with something a little bit more out there. And that might be the case for the next race, and the Ballymore Novices hurdle. If you literally were any other, an alien coming down from space, and you looked at this race, you think Hermes Allen 3-1. This horse has done nothing wrong. That shallow hurdle form is exemplary. When you're looking for form, there it is. 3-1. I don't understand why we think it's so mad that this horse can't win this race. Now, there are plenty in here that potentially will improve again, but he's got the course form, course and distance form. He is trained by someone that knows how to win this race, yet his record over the last couple of years hasn't been great. But Ross, I'll ask you first, why is Hermes Allen still underestimated?
I think it's Brave Man's Game scenario. I think there's so many parallels between what Hermes Allen did and Brave Man's Game did, and it ultimately didn't work out for Brave Man's Game. And I think we can be guilty of not separating out and understanding horses are individuals. I think as the season has progressed, his chances have become more apparent. He's a really smart jumper. My question is just whether he's going to get hassled around a little bit in what's going to be a bigger field. He's been able to race in his own little pocket, off the front when winning at Cheltenham, and he found he got a really nice ride from Harry Cobden when winning at the Challow. I just wonder whether he's going to be able to go in that nice rhythm that's clearly served him so well. And the Challow form has worked out really well, but a lot of horses in the Challow underperform because of the ground. I mean, Thomas Moore, for example, won at Ascot last weekend, but he just didn't run his race in Challow on soft ground by Dylan Thomas, got back on better ground at Ascot and completely turned his form around. So I'm actually a little bit nervous of taking the Challow form literally, because I think a lot of horses there just did not run to the mark. But yeah, I absolutely think Hermes Allen's got a great chance. I'm just a really big fan though of Impaire Et Passe. I think he's a really slick jumper. Might just have a bit more toe than Hermes Allen. I think he's a quicker horse. His Nace form didn't work out all that well. The horse that finished second came out and was well beaten back at Nace next time. But at Punchestown gained £7 and 6 lengths to a 131 rated horse. I just think this is going to be the race they've got. It's really tricky at the moment to figure out who's going where, but I think I'd be pretty confident that they're going to go here with this horse in particular. And I just think he might have a bit more speed at the back end of the race. And it does tend to be a quick horse that wins the Ballymore. Plenty win the Ballymore and drop back to champion hurdle sort of distances. So I really like him. And then another one just at a bigger price, and she just really impressed me on Tuesday actually at Market Raisin, is the Dan Scout and Train Katira. She's, again, going to have to step up, but she'd get the £7 mare's allowance. She gave £10 and an easy 20 length beating to a mare Fergal O'Brien's that I think is probably a 110 mare who seemed to run her race. Again, at Market Raisin, Katira was keen, had to cut out her own running. I think in a better race in a bigger field, she could be better still. I don't know what their plans are. I think she has a handicap mark now that she could run in handicaps, but a decent big price. I thought she's an impressive mare with a big engine.
Okay, another mare that will have to take it on the boys in what, again, if you take out I suppose the top two in the market have got plenty going for them, but they're no given. Well, I mean, I'm still a bit bemused why Hermes Allen isn't shorter. But just a quick point on Ross on Impaire Et Passe. Missed the Dublin Racing Festival. I tried to work it out. I know Willie Mullins had plenty of horses to run at the Dublin Racing Festival, and it might just didn't seem necessary. But then I also feel with Willie Mullins is a bit like Cheltenham. Everything runs at the Dublin Racing Festival, and you sort it all out like we saw in the Irish Arkle, and then you go from that. Why did he miss it? Was there anything that came out of that? Does that concern you at all?
I think with Willie Mullins, you just can't let anything concern you. He's a law unto himself. He does things very differently to the majority. I just wonder whether, having had two runs fairly close together, whether he seems to be taking his time a bit more with these novices, I think, in the last 3 or 4 years than he had perhaps previously. And he's spoken about not being able to get them out as early this year because we had the very late sort of summer. So no, I think you just have to trust that he knows what he's doing, and he'll get him there in A1 form.
Yeah, you have to, and he always does. He certainly sends everything to Cheltenham. And Impaire Et Passe 4-1 will be in the Simon Muir and Isaac Sway double green, who have a embarrassment of riches really for this festival this year, and this is one of their top chances as well. Okay, so Ross's selections there. TC, just gonna go back to this point about Hermes Allen, because I know you're a big Brave Man's Game fan. Profile-wise, Brave Man's Game actually came into Cheltenham with a lot more racecourse experience. It was a bumper horse. Hermes Allen was seen in a point-to-point. Maybe, I'm not massively in his camp, but I just from a betting perspective and putting a odds compiler hat on, feel like, he won his point-to-point over 3 miles. He seems like more of a ready-made horse than Brave Man's Game was. And, he's turned out to be a better horse as a novice and now as a novice chaser. Why, Hermes Allen couldn't be better than him at his age, I can't really work that out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I do fear Hermes Allen. I'm a big fan of him as well after watching him at Cheltenham's November meeting and then tipping him up on the pod for the Challow. But the reason why I'm against him here, and, I'll probably have a save on him because I'm that kind of person. But the reason why I'm against him for my lead selection is because, much like Ross said there, he's dictated matters at his own speed in his past 3 races for Paul Nicholls. And in the Cheltenham Festival Novice Hurdle, they're going to go hard up front. There's going to be someone, at least one other, that will want to take him on from an early stage. And that could just see him out in the closing stages. Now, I still expect him to run very well. He's, on my book, around 9-4. So if you're getting 3-1, I think there's still value there. Even 11-4, 5-2, there's still a slither of value. So that's why I'll probably have a saver on him if he's around that price. However, on my book, I also have Good Land around 3-1. He's available at 9-2. So I'm going to go the way of Good Land just at this stage for a value perspective. This horse virtually ticks every single trend that you need to win a Ballymore Novice Hurdle. He began his career in Ireland, tick 1. He's won over 2 mile, 4 furlongs or further, another tick. He's won a graded race, another tick, etc., etc. I could keep going on. There's only one trend that he doesn't actually tick, which I'll come to in a second. His last 2 wins have been seriously impressive as well. He beat a subsequent Grade 3 performer on his penultimate outing, a horse that is currently favourite for the Albert Bartlett that I'm sure we'll cover in a second. And then last time out, he proved his stamina and he proved his class when he managed to win a Grade 1 over 2 mile 6. He is dropping slightly in trip, but that's no problem at all, despite the fact he's going to develop into a lovely 3-miler. Now, the one trend that he doesn't tick is the fact that he's a 7-year-old, and 7-year-olds don't generally win the Ballymore. It tends to be 6-year-olds. However, this horse is really unexposed. He had to miss a year due to an injury, so I don't see that as a major point here. He possesses plenty of speed despite having stamina. So there's another tick there for Good Land. And I think he will race prominently, probably just a length or two behind Hermes Allen. So given he has extra stamina and given Hermes Allen could be taken on up front early, I think Good Land is going to be in the better position in the race. And I think there is more value there, 1.5 points on my book, 9-2 currently, 3-1 in my book, rather than 3-1 compared to 9-4 in Hermes Allen. Obviously, my book is not legit, and other people have different opinions on what prices horses should be. But with that being said, Good Land has to be my play.
What do you think about his jumping? Because he had that sort of quite novicey unseat back in December, but they've definitely improved his jumping. But that grade 1 last time, do you think it really sort of made a man of him?
Yeah, I really do. That was his first proper test, and I thought he travelled through that race lovely. I think they missed the final hurdle that day, so we haven't really seen him where he's in the red and he has to perform over a hurdle. He has to nail the last flight and get over it from A to B without making a mistake. You mentioned there the unseated early in his career, 3 runs back. He actually jumped that hurdle really nicely. He was just a bit skew-iff in the air, and the rider just went out the side door. So I don't think the jumping, despite the fact he's got a U next to his name, actually was the issue there. It was more just a lack of balance given how he jumped, how he was skew-iff in the air. But he negotiated from one side to the other perfectly fine. I think he's an okay jumper. No, he's not as good as Hermes Allen, who is phenomenal across his hurdles. But at the same time, I don't see it as a massive negative for Good Land.
Just like my selection in the Supreme, again trained by Barry Connell, a case could be said that he would be shorter for this race if he was WP Mullins or even Nicky Henderson. Even Paul Nicholls, Nicky Henderson again without a horse in this race. But Good Land and Marine Nationale, it's incredible really that this trainer with such a small amount of horses has got 2 major chances for these grade 1s. And Good Land, as you say, we've got him here 5-1. Things will change, and it possibly will be. It'll be interesting to see where the money goes over the next couple of weeks as we head closer to it. Hermes Allen, as it is, I think is a good price for what he has done and what he has showed, and I think we've covered that. We've covered those bases. Yes, things might not work. It's a risk you're going to take how the race will pan out, but it will be the same for all of them. But Good Land, there's a very good case there from TC. I will go for Gaelic Warrior. Now, this horse, I'm still uncertain where he will go. I think they are slightly more tempted by the Ballymore. He was last seen winning at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival over 2 miles. Feel like he wasn't stopping at the line. In no circumstances. That was just a handicap, but he won that race off top weight, showing himself to be a seriously useful horse with all that weight. And what a point that TC made about racing experience and being be slightly battle hardened. I think Gaelic Warrior, unlike a lot of these horses, like we saw his first run for Willie Mullins was in the Boodles last year, where he was just beaten second, and he's run in all types of races. They've really mixed it up. They really challenged him. And I think even though he's only 5 years of age, he possesses a lot more racing maturity than some of the others. And I think that experience will stand him into good effect. And I like him here at 6-1. And again, if he had gone down a slightly different route into this race, he might have been shorter. But he's clearly a very talented horse. And I like how he did it last time. And he is currently 6-1 chance as well. It's a race again. I think the Ballymore, like the Supreme Novices, where there's a good bit of value as well around. I'm just going to throw out Inthepocket, who's around about 16-1 for Henry de Bromhead, who's suddenly just a little bit quietly getting back into form. He's just had a struggle earlier on in the year. Definitely did at the Dublin Racing Festival. And this is one of the horses that actually ran really well for him at the Dublin Racing Festival. He was second to Etait Temps and just caught my eye just a little bit. I thought he just was running on really nicely over 2 miles to suggest that this trip will really suit him. He's another horse by Blue Brazil, who is the sire of TC's selection Good Land. And I think that at around 16-1, he could show himself well, and I'm just intrigued to see him stepping up in distance. So that's the Ballymore Novices Hurdle. where I think there's definitely, as we've said, a bit of value around. But I think if you can still get 3-1 for Hermes Allen, as TC has said, that I don't think that's worth throwing away. Right, on to the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle we go, where there's even better prices. 7-1 the field for the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle. As always, this is more of a race where you can have a little more fun sort of working it out, because as we've seen in years go by, this can throw up a bit of a shock result. Horses that I think over the last few years we've seen, I remember going back to how many years ago it was now, to the likes of Manila Indo was a double figure price for this race. Last year, the Nice Guy won it, and I think he was, 18-1. Vanilla the year before was 14-1. Manila Indo, 50-1. So, and TC's the stat man, but it looks to me, we've got to go back to 2013 to see a last winning favourite. So we love this. Embassy Garden 7-1, 3-card Bragg 9-1, along with Monty Star and Hidden Valley Lake 11-1, Corbett's Cross, Favori de Champedou 12-1, along with Absolute Notions, and Sandal Clegane 18-1, bigger the rest. TC, you touched on a horse that links quite nicely with yours, who runs in the Albert Bartlett, one of your selections from the Supreme.
Yes, and currently heads the market. And, this race is interesting from a number of reasons. We'll get into the horse in just 2 seconds. But not only has there been big price winners in recent years, but those horses have then become good horses in open company as well. But they've all been Irish, which I think is very crucial to this race. I was actually fortunate enough to back the winner last year in the Nice Guy, and Willie Mullins' horses just tend to go underrated in this race, and it doesn't really make sense to me. Now in the field, he's got Embassy Gardens, who's the market leader at around 11-2, and this horse ties in nicely, as does Corbett's Cross for Emmett Mullins, who's second favourite. Both of these obviously Irish trained horses. I think they're vulnerable, I have to say. I think Willie Mullins has got a couple in the field that are bigger prices that have actually got a better chance than Embassy Gardens, for example. And I know Embassy Gardens absolutely bolted up last time, but it really was an egg and spoon race. He had to beat nothing. And Corbett's Cross will be making his first start for Emmett Mullins, potentially at the Cheltenham Festival, which will just see a load of cash go his way. But on the form, I don't think he's too special, I have to say. And it's a horse who he beat 2 starts back, Corbett's Cross, called Seabank Bistro, who's my number 1 selection for the race. I'm actually more confident about picking the winner for the Albert Bartlett, despite the fact I'm about to put up 2 double-figure prices, than the Ballymore or the Supreme, where I'm with shorter price performers. Seabank Bistro is number 1. He's currently available around 22-1, I think. This guy came to hand early in his career. He ran in the Champion Bumper last year and finished 4th. Now, I know Ross has already touched on in this pod that the Champion Bumper form hasn't really worked out. But going into the Champion Bumper, there were horses in there that people were touting as the next coming. We had Facile Vega, we had American Mike, we had James's Gate, who I still think is a very good horse, and we just haven't seen this year due to injury. Seabank Bistro actually finished 4th behind those 3 runners. This year, he's been backed into short price favoritism on all 3 starts. He just seems to me like a real work in progress, a horse that's not the end product by any means. He's just a big type who doesn't really get over his hurdles very fluently. But last time out, I thought it was a massive improvement on his previous efforts. And when he finished second to Corbett's Cross 2 starts back, the race I just touched on there, he was too far back in the field. Corbett's Cross was up front. He made a real good move, coming around the final bend into the home straight, and just could never get on terms with the eventual leader. The step up to 3 miles just screams in the favour of Seabank Bistro. And I think 22-1 is a massive price. Now, I know price-wise it's put him up and he was 33-1, which is unfortunate. But 22-1 is still very fair. And the other Willie Mullins trainee that I like in this race, now I'm not 100% sure he's going to run here, but if he does, is Shan Bally Kid. He's a son of Presenting, the brilliant sire of Denman, War of Attrition, etc. I could carry on. Out of a Kalanisi mare who had speed to his pedigree. So far, he's looked like he's just stamina. There is no speed in Shambally Kid. He's only run twice over hurdles, so he's not as forward as Seabank Bistro. But last time out, he looked extremely inexperienced, yet still managed to come out on top. He's been heavily punted in both of his races as well, much like Seabank Bistro. And last time out, he beat a horse called Monty Star. Now, that horse has subsequently come out and won a grade 3 at Navan, so the form is stacking up. I do have a concern about his jumping. It's probably worse than Marine Nationale. It's probably worse than Good Land and all the horses, Gaelic Warrior, who have got jumping issues in the previous races we've touched on. but he's 20-1 as well. So I'll take Shambally Kid and Seabank Bistro in another year where I think Willie Mullins is going to come out on top with one of his outsiders.
Yeah, I think I remember very well from the Nice Guy, a horse I also managed to back as well, was that the comments about him beforehand was that he just surprised him. He didn't know, what he was doing on the gallops wasn't really matching up with what he was doing on track. He was just really taking him by surprise. And he sort of reminded me in his comparison to Monkfish. He obviously won this race as well. A narrow type, gangly type, one that's definitely going to develop into a better chaser. And, you look at the pedigrees of these, Seabank Bistro, who I think has got, plenty of big chasers in his family, as the Shambally Kid. And that's, what they'll be. They are work in progress, their frames themselves. So it's just whether that they've got mentally the ability to take on this challenge early on. So that's what I love about this race. I think it makes it interesting. Also, by the Friday, last couple of years, I know we had that downpour of rain on the Wednesday of last year, and it made sure that the ground was lovely. It was proper, nice sort of softish ground at least. I don't know what we're going to get this year. I don't know whether it's going to be definitely on the better side, which won't make it into such a slog, such a test, which it has been as well. So I like the fact that Shambally Kid, as you say, has got a bit of speed in his pedigree as well. So yeah, it's intriguing. Good prices there. Seabank Bistro 22-1, Shambally Kid 18-1. Ross, is this a race that really gets you excited? Really gets the heart pounding the way that you work it out?
No, not massively at this stage. I think you're absolutely right. It does tend to throw up some really decent performers. I think it's a real muddle at the moment as to who's going to go where. But there's a horse in here that I just think has been massively overlooked in the market, and that's Kim Bailey's Chianto Classico. Unbeaten in 3 hurdle starts. Started off over 2 mile 3 at Chepstow. Outpaced all the way up the home straight and slogged it out to beat good horse Henri II of Paul Nichols. Then stepped up exactly a furlong at Market Raisin and won by 8.5 lengths. And then stepped up another furlong again at Wincanton, 2 mile 5.5 furlongs. Bolted up by 24 lengths, beating Stoner's Choice, who's a 130 horse, Sasaiko, who's a 133 horse. Now, Sasaiko is, as his name suggests, you can't take his rating literally, but they're both smart horses, and he absolutely demolished them in very easy fashion. Missed the last, could have been any distance you like. He's only going to improve for going up further in trip. I think he's had a lovely prep for this. 3 hurdle races, nice and early, been freshened up now. It's not run since the beginning of January. Whether he'll run again, I think is unlikely. I really like Kim Bailey as a trainer. He buys a really nice type of horse. This is definitely a 3-mile chaser in the making. I think he's 50-1. You can name your price. I think he's got a really nice profile for this, and I'm surprised he's not a bit shorter in the market. But I think that's, again, coming down to, it just being Irish winners. But we did have Kilbrick and Storm not all that long ago. So, I really like this horse. I think he's got a really nice profile for this.
Yeah, I was lucky to be there actually in Wincanton when he won last time. And what actually, the race slightly fell apart a little bit, but I spoke to Kim Bailey afterwards, and he was apoplectic that the rules had changed, that he couldn't get this horse into a one of the handicaps because he needs to run 4 times over hurdles, and he's only run 3. And I think with a rating of 133, whatever the UK handicapper gives in out will be next week. But that I think he was sort of tailor-made for a county hurdle or something like that in previous years. So his hand is sort of forced a little bit. But it would be great if he has decided the horse that clearly looks good enough to give it a go in this kind of company. And yeah, Kim Bailey might not be as well known for this type of horse, but it definitely it forces his hand, as I say. So let's see if he can make the most of it in a race, as we have touched on, where there's a lot of value in and around. So thanks for that, Ross. I have Same again. I wouldn't say I'm massively keen. A bit like TC, I was trying to find the kind of under the radar Willie Mullins horse, a bit like the Nice Guy last year. And I just struggled a little bit, probably because they're just not big enough prices for me. But I do like the KCC Bank Bistro. Mine I've gone for and actually links well with TC's selection because we touched on it because was beaten by Monty's Star was second to TC selection last time, but then went on and won. I like this horse. I think that he is probably surprising Henry de Bromhead, hence why he was ridden by Sean Flanagan last time when he beat his stable companion. Don't think there's anything wrong with that. He's clearly a horse that's improving, as I mentioned, race after race. And the fact that he's a half-brother to none other than Monolly, who was second in this race himself a few years ago in 2017, he's another model that will be, I'd imagine, a better chaser, as we've touched on. That ticks the box. But the big thing for me is that he just improved with the step up and trip. He went up to the 3 miles last time and he just saw it out really strongly. I think this horse is going to want even further in the future. So he's got that in his locker, and I think that he, at a price around 9-1, possibly could even be bigger by the time we get to it, because I think some of these Willie Mullins horses will come for a bit of support. I like him based on what he did last time. And then the other selection is Gordon Elliott. And it's surprising we haven't had one Gordon Elliott selection throughout the course of these 3 races yet. A trainer that, only a few years ago had the likes of Sam Crow in these races. Favori de Champedou could go to the Martin Pipe. We'll see what his mark is. But he's around 12-1 for this race. Should he go there instead. Now, he beat Let's Be Clear About It last time over the Christmas period, Limerick. Let's Be Clear About It has gone on and franked that form well, really, really well. Yes, it was only a maiden last time, but he couldn't have been more impressive for Gavin Cromwell. He showed himself to be a strong stay at the trip. It was very testing ground that day, and I would want it to be probably on the softer side. But I just think that they just kind of kept him a little bit quiet, and they haven't run him again, and they're going to keep him nice and fresh for this run because they raced him quite a lot in the earlier part of last year, probably getting the ground. So Favori de Champedou at 12-1, as I said, could go to the Martin Pipe, but if not, I'd be happy to see him here. So that's the Albert Bartlett Novices Hurdle, and we've gone a good sprint throughout the course of all these 3 novice hurdle races. Of course, there's so much more over the whole 4 days of the Cheltenham Festival. We do have special podcasts that TC and Ross and I have covered for plenty of the other divisions, the open divisions and the novice chases as well. But we will have a special podcast dedicated to the full 4 days, which we will be recording closer to the time. Hopefully we're going to get some plans, guys. There's still so much water to go under the bridge about what the targets will be, where horses will go. And, fingers crossed, it is an extremely important time for a lot of the trainers, owners, etc., that all these horses stay fit and they stay healthy. So let's see what happens over the next while. Thank you, TC, for joining me. Thank you, Ross, for joining me. We, as always, have our special podcast, have our regular podcast for all the weekend action. So make sure that you tune into them if this is your first time listening to us. But as ever, thank you. Subscribe, like, and we will see you soon.